The chamber of the Galactic Council stretched wider than Earth's great cathedrals, a dome of crystalline light suspended over a sea of voices. Here, in this sanctum of order, the galaxy's rulers debated not with weapons but with words. At the heart of the chamber, a platform rose into the glow. On it stood Ambassador Hale, Earth's chosen representative, his shoulders squared, his voice sharp with urgency. Before him, hundreds of alien delegates shifted in their perches, silken robes rustling, frilled necks flaring, eye stalks twitching. Some glittered with bioluminescence, some flickered with telepathic pulses, but most of them wore the same expression, thinly veiled amusement. "Counselors," began, his words carried by translator fields into hundreds of minds simultaneously. "We have evidence, disturbing evidence. Out beyond the Orion Verge, our deep-range scouts have intercepted transmissions. Systems are falling dark. A fleet is massing." The murmur rippled across the chamber. For a brief heartbeat, silence followed as though the words held weight. But then came the sound it dreaded: laughter. It was not the laughter of joy, but of condescension. A serpentine delegate from the clans flicked its tongue and hissed. "Ah, the humans, always with their wars and shadows, always with their fear." Another, a towering draped in ceremonial banners, clattered its mandibles. "Violence is a disease your species has yet to cure. You see phantoms because bloodshed is in your nature." Clenched his jaw, he forced himself not to shout, not to betray the anger boiling in his chest. "These are not phantoms. We have recordings, telemetry, survivors. A predatory fleet is moving toward Council space. They are not interested in trade or diplomacy. They come for conquest, annihilation." The Council's prime speaker, an ageless being of shimmering energy, raised a limb of refracted light. "Annihilation?" it echoed, as if testing the unfamiliar word. Then its radiance brightened, a gesture akin to a smile. "Ambassador Hale, such things do not exist anymore. War is a relic, a disease long since cured. The age of conquest ended ago. There are no predators left." His hand tightened on the edge of the podium. "With respect, Prime Speaker, peace is not a natural state. It is a balance, fragile, temporary. On Earth, we learned this lesson through centuries of blood. You mistake your good fortune for permanence, and when this enemy arrives, your illusions will not shield you." The chamber erupted, not in fear but in outrage. A counselor with skin like hammered bronze rose, her voice ringing like bells. "Such barbaric philosophy, to suggest that peace is weakness. This is why your kind is not ready to join us." Another waved translucent fins disdainfully. "They live on a single fragile world and think themselves prophets of doom. Their history of savagery blinds them to enlightenment." Felt the weight of 1,000 eyes. He was not a peer here, not truly. Humanity was the newcomer, the child species barely crawling into the stars. The Council had allowed Earth into the chamber as a courtesy, a gesture of inclusion, never as an equal. And now, when humanity came not with pleas but with warnings, they were laughed at like a fool shouting at shadows. "Counselors," said again, his voice sharp enough to cut through the jeers. He leaned forward, his eyes blazing with a fire older than the chamber itself. "Do you know what happens when you laugh at the dark? The dark laughs back." For the briefest moment, silence returned. Some delegates shifted uneasily, their mirth faltering under the humans' glare. But the prime speaker dismissed it with a wave of light. "Enough," it said, its voice echoing across the dome. "The Council does not act on fear. This chamber will not be swayed by human paranoia. The matter is settled." A ceremonial chime resonated, final and absolute. The debate was closed. Stood alone on the platform, the Council's laughter still ringing in his ears. His message had been rejected, his evidence dismissed. In their arrogance, the Council believed the galaxy's long peace eternal. But knew better, humanity knew better. Peace was not eternal, it was the eye of the storm. And storms always return. As he stepped down from the platform, a thought settled cold in his chest. The Council had condemned themselves, blind in their pride. And when the predators arrived, as they surely would, the galaxy would discover the truth humanity had always known. Peace survives only because someone is willing to fight for it. And the humans would be ready. The voyage home was silent. Ambassador Hale sat alone in the viewing chamber of the Terran diplomatic cruiser Resolute Dawn, watching stars streak past in threads of light. The silence was not only in the hum of the engines, but in his chest, a silence carved by rage. He had spoken, pleaded, shouted warnings into the Council's ears, and they had laughed. His aide, Lieutenant, entered with careful steps. She carried a data slate under her arm, her expression tight with restrained anger. "Ambassador," she said softly, "we've decrypted the latest reports from the outposts along the verge. More systems have gone dark, entire colonies cut off." Turned his head, his eyes shadowed by exhaustion. "Show me." Placed the slate on the console. A series of blinking red sigils appeared, each marking a vanished system. One or two could be explained, solar flares, malfunctions, natural disasters, but not 12, not entire clusters, silent within weeks. "This is what they mocked," whispered. He tapped the sigils, each a tombstone. "Evidence of a fleet that hunts from the shadows, evidence they refused to see." His voice trembled with fury. "Why didn't they believe us?" Gave a bitter laugh. "Because they've forgotten fear. To them, war is legend. They think we're savages chained to a dead past. They don't understand that peace isn't the natural state of the universe. It's the exception." Lowered her gaze. "What do we do now?" The question hung in the cabin like smoke. His answer came slowly, heavy with the weight of inevitability. "We prepare. If the Council won't face the storm, humanity must weather it alone." On Earth, the news broke like a storm. The network spun the story of the Council's mockery into a wound shared by all of humanity. Clips of standing in the Council chamber played on every broadcast, his words replayed again and again. "Do you know what happens when you laugh at the dark? The dark laughs back." Some called him a prophet, others a warmonger, but beneath the noise, fear took root. Fear that the Council's arrogance would cost billions of lives. In military academies across Earth and Mars, simulations began in secret. Admirals dusted off doctrines mothballed for centuries. Generals whispered of asymmetric warfare, of strategies meant not for defense but for survival. Humanity's long history of bloodshed, and condemned by the Council, was quietly revisited. Every war was studied again, not with shame, but with purpose. And in the cold reaches of space, the burned with light. Ships were laid down at a pace unseen since the old Terran wars. Not sleek, ceremonial vessels like those the Council paraded at festivals, but brutal machines of survival. Carriers bristling with drones, destroyers armed with kinetic cannons, frigates designed to strike fast and vanish into the void. The Council called such construction barbaric excess. Humanity called it insurance. Far beyond the Council's borders, the truth revealed itself with merciless clarity. On a lonely moon orbiting a red star, a mining colony transmitted a desperate distress call. The signal was jagged, filled with screams and static. "They came out of the dark, shapes, hundreds of them, ships." The transmission ended in a rising shriek, cut off mid-syllable. When a Council patrol arrived days later, they found nothing. No survivors, no ships, not even debris. The colony's surface had been scoured clean as though it had never existed. The Council dismissed it as a catastrophic accident. But humanity collected the signal, analyzed every pixel of data, every echo in the static. Hidden in the noise was the shape of a vessel, a jagged silhouette unlike anything in the Council's archives. "Predators." Back aboard Resolute Dawn received the report. He stood for a long time in silence, staring at the grainy outline of the alien ship. His jaw tightened until his teeth ached. "They're real," said softly, her voice edged with fear. Turned to her, his eyes cold steel. "Of course they're real, and when they strike, the Council will beg us to save them." Hesitated, "Will we?" Did not answer immediately. His gaze returned to the dark outline of the ship, a shadow against the stars. "Yes," he said at last, "because if we don't, no one will, but when the Council comes crawling, they'll remember this day, the day they laughed at humanity's warnings." He turned away, his silhouette stark against the viewport. "And when the predators come, we will be ready. We'll fight them with everything the Council tried to bury, with everything they fear about us." His voice dropped to a whisper, as if confessing a secret not meant for the stars. Chaos, we'll fight them with chaos. The first silence was explained away. A communications relay in the Cygnus fringe failed to report on schedule. The council logged it as a technical malfunction. No panic, no urgency, machines broke all the time. The second silence was harder to ignore. An agricultural colony on a lush moon vanished from the network, its final transmission cut mid-word. The council attributed it to natural disaster. But when the third, fourth, and fifth silences came in rapid succession, even the most complacent voices wavered. Dozens of systems, entire worlds, blinked out in weeks. No wreckage, no survivors, just silence. Still, the council clung to its illusions. Communications anomaly, they called it. Pirates, they speculated. Coincidence, they insisted. But in the shadows of those excuses, fear began to bloom. On the border station, a listening post manned by humans and council observers, the fear became real. Lieutenant Commander leaned over the console, his face pale in the glow of shifting waveforms. "Sir," he said to the watch officer, "I'm picking up distortions on deep-range sensors, multiple signatures, they're moving fast." The watch officer, a seasoned alien with eyes like polished obsidian, frowned. "Probably freighters, space is never empty." "No," whispered. He increased the resolution, isolating the patterns. His pulse quickened. "These aren't freighters, look, tight formations, coordinated vectors, this is a fleet." The council observer scoffed. "Impossible, no species moves in such numbers anymore, you're misinterpreting noise." But then the comms channel came alive. A mining colony 6 light towers away screamed into the void. Static, frantic voices, the thunder of explosions. "They're here, ships, hundreds, they're cutting through our defenses like paper." The channel broke in a burst of static. The station fell silent. Everyone stared at the dead console. The council observer muttered in disbelief. "It must be a meteor strike." Slammed his fist on the console. "That wasn't a meteor, that was an attack." The predators swept through the verge like fire through dry grass. Colonies fell in hours. Patrol ships vanished without distress calls. Survivors spoke of dark shapes emerging from the void, vessels of jagged metal that seemed to drink in the starlight. But what terrified them most was the silence. The predators made no demands. They sent no signals, no ultimatums. They didn't gloat, they didn't threaten. They simply arrived, destroyed, and vanished. To the council, accustomed to centuries of ritual and diplomacy, the absence of words was unthinkable. To humanity, it was familiar. Predators did not speak to prey. In Geneva, the Unified Defense Council convened in a chamber hidden deep beneath the Alps. Holograms of admirals and generals flickered around the table. On the central display hung the grainy outline Hale had shown months before, the jagged silhouette of a predator ship. Admiral Sophia, from the Martian conflicts, stood with hands behind her back. "We're facing a force that doesn't negotiate, doesn't hesitate, and doesn't care about the Council's illusions. If we wait for permission, we'll be extinct before they finish debating." General leaned forward. "And when the Council finally admits the truth, they'll beg us to lead. The question is, are we ready?" The room fell silent. Slowly, Hale stepped forward. His face was hard, but his eyes burned with grim certainty. "We've always been ready. History taught us how to fight when others forgot. The predators are not the first monsters we've faced. They won't be the last." He placed a hand on the hologram of the enemy ship, its silhouette sharp against his palm. "We warned them. They laughed. Now they'll learn the truth. Peace doesn't endure by laughter. It endures because someone stands guard in the dark." Back on station, Lieutenant Commander stood at the viewport, staring into the abyss. The station was quiet now, too quiet. The Predator fleet had vanished into the dark after destroying the colony. The sensors showed nothing. No heat signatures, no transmissions, no movement, just silence. But felt it in his bones. They were still out there. Watching. Waiting. The silence wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The Predators struck like a storm breaking through glass. In the system, a glittering jewel of the Council's core worlds, defenses designed for ceremonial parades collapsed in hours. Planetary shields sputtered, crumbling beneath barrages of energy far beyond their design. Council fleets, pristine and polished, fell apart in chaotic retreat. Civilian ships fled in all directions, choking jump planes with screams of panic. The predators tore through them with surgical precision. No messages, no ultimatums, no mercy. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Galactic Council faced true annihilation, and they were helpless. In the grand chamber of the council, chaos reigned. Delegates wailed, shouted, accused one another. The prime speaker's voice cracked through the din, demanding order, but its words carried no authority anymore. The illusion of peace had shattered. Finally, a voice rang out, "Summon the humans." The chamber fell silent. Every gaze turned toward the speaker, a thin, trembling delegate from the border worlds who had witnessed the first silences. "They warned us. We mocked them, but they were right. They are the only ones prepared for this." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Reluctantly, the council voted. A message was sent to Earth, a plea. When the transmission reached Geneva, humanity was ready. Admiral Sophia stood before the War Council, the Council's desperate request flickering on the screen behind her. "They've finally come crawling," she said, her voice cold. "They beg us to fight for them after mocking us in front of the stars." General's jaw was tight. "Do we answer?" Hale, weary yet resolute, stepped forward. "We do, because if we don't, there will be nothing left. But make no mistake, this isn't charity, this is survival. And survival means we fight this war our way." No one argued. The decision had already been made months ago, when the first silences began. Humanity's reply was not a speech, it was a fleet. From the shipyards of Mars, Luna, Titan, and the orbital forges of Ceres, steel leviathans surged into the void. Ships bristling with rail cannons, missile pods, and drone swarms. Carriers the size of floating cities, destroyers built for speed and violence, frigates armed with weapons the Council had outlawed centuries before. And behind the ships came soldiers, armored, disciplined, unflinching. Marines trained in zero-gravity boarding, commandos specialized in sabotage, cyber warriors capable of infecting entire fleets with a single line of code. Where the Council peace, humanity had prepared for war. The system burned. Council forces scattered in panic, retreating to the fringes of the system as predator ships carved through their lines. Civilian convoys screamed for help, their signals choking the channels. And then, as the predators closed on the orbital cities, a new signature appeared on sensors. Not sleek Council craft, but brutal, angular shapes with hulls blackened for stealth. The Terran fleet emerged from the void like wolves entering a slaughterhouse. The predators pivoted, their formations shifting to meet the newcomers. But humanity had been waiting for this moment. "Deploy the nets," Admiral commanded. Terran frigates shot forward, seeding the void with micro-satellites linked by invisible threads of distortion. When the predator ships advanced, they found their movements warped, their vectors bent. Precision formations collapsed into chaos. Then came the hammer. Rail cannons roared, hurling tungsten slugs at velocities that tore through predator armor like paper. Missile pods bloomed with fire, guided by AIs that adapted mid-flight. Drone swarms spread like locusts, jamming sensors, piercing hulls, detonating inside the enemy's core. For the first time, the predators faltered. From a Council observation ship, terrified delegates watched the battle unfold. They had expected the humans to fight desperately, to buy time before inevitable collapse. Instead, they saw choreography of violence unlike anything in living memory. The predators were not simply being resisted, they were being hunted. "By the stars," whispered one delegate trembling, "they fight like monsters." Another, older and wiser, shook his head. "No, they fight like survivors." On the bridge of the TNS Valiant, Admiral watched as the predators broke formation, retreating toward the edge of the system. Her eyes were cold, her voice steady. "Do not pursue," she ordered. "They'll be back. This was only the first clash." Hale stood beside her, arms crossed, gaze hard on the fleeing enemy. The council thought peace eternal. Now they'll see what it costs to defend it. He turned, his voice low enough for only her to hear. We warned them, they didn't listen. So now, Admiral, will teach them, and when this war is done, the galaxy will never laugh at humanity again. The Admiral's lips curved in a grim smile. No, they'll fear us. And as the fleet regrouped amid the wreckage of, humanity's reply echoed across the stars, not in words, but in fire. The Predators regrouped quickly. Their ships did not retreat into silence for long. Within weeks of the clash, fresh fleets emerged from the void, larger, heavier, more disciplined. They adapted faster than the Council could comprehend. For every Council fleet they encountered, the Predators grew bolder, cutting deeper into the core systems. But humanity was not the Council. In the dark between stars, Terran fleets moved like knives. The TNS Valiant led the 3rd Expeditionary Armada into the corridor, where Predator forces were massing. Admiral Sophia stood at the center of the tactical dome, holographic projections flickering around her. Enemy vectors, decoy trails, artificial anomalies seeded across the system. Enemy strength superior, her AI reported calmly. Probability of Terran defeat in direct engagement, 93%. Smiled thinly. Good, then we won't fight them directly. The trap unfolded in silence. Terran destroyers darted into asteroid fields, laying mines disguised as drifting rock. Frigates spread false heat signatures, luring Predators into dead space. Entire powered down to dark mode, vanishing from sensors. When the Predators advanced, they believed themselves hunters closing on helpless prey. Instead, they found themselves walking into a labyrinth. The first salvo came without warning, an asteroid that split apart, revealing rail cannons hidden inside. Predator cruisers buckled under the opening strike. Then came the drones, swarming from stealth carriers, their coded chatter infecting Predator targeting systems. Confusion rippled through the enemy lines. And at the center, the Valiant lit its drives and surged forward, guns blazing. The battle was not clean, it was chaos. Predator ships, enormous and bristling with alien weaponry, fired wildly into the void, striking decoys or their own kind. Terran ships darted in and out like wolves, striking weak points and fatting back into shadow. Boarding pods slammed into Predator hulls, disgorging Terran Marines who fought in brutal close quarters, cutting their way to reactor cores before detonating charges. To the Council observers, watching from a safe distance, it was madness. This isn't battle, one delegate whispered in horror. It's slaughter. But another delegate, voice trembling with awe, answered, no, it's war. We've forgotten what it looks like. Hours later, the corridor burned with wreckage. Predator vessels drifted shattered, their formations broken. Terran losses were heavy, but the Predators had been driven back once more. On the bridge of the Valiant, Admiral surveyed the carnage. Smoke hung in the air, the scent of scorched metal and blood. Status, she asked. 47 ships lost, her XO reported grimly. Hundreds dead, thousands wounded, but the enemy is in full retreat. Nodded once, it was a victory, but a costly one. Humanity had always paid for survival in blood. The Council was shaken. News of the battle rippled across the chamber. For the first time, the delegates spoke not with scorn, but with unease. Humanity's tactics unsettled them. Deception, ambush, psychological warfare, these were methods they had abandoned as barbaric, and yet those methods worked. A voice rose above the murmurs. Are we watching our saviors or our future conquerors? The question lingered unanswered. Meanwhile, the Predators adapted again. Survivors have carried data back into the void. Soon, Terran scouts reported new formations, coordination, countermeasures designed to resist deception. The Predators were learning. On Mars, strategists pored over the intelligence with grim faces. They're fast, General muttered. Faster than anything we've seen, every battle teaches them. Hale, watching from the corner, said what none wished to. Then we must teach them harder lessons. We cannot match their numbers, we cannot match their power, but we can drown them in chaos. He leaned forward, his voice low, dangerous. War is not about strength, it's about breaking the enemy's mind. And so humanity fought differently. In one system, they detonated a star's unstable moon, flooding the region with debris that crippled Predator fleets. In another, they seeded Predator ships with viral AIs that turned targeting systems into illusions, convincing them they were under attack from all directions. Terran commandos infiltrated Predator strongholds, broadcasting screams of their victims back into enemy channels, sowing fear where none should exist. It was brutal, it was merciless, it was effective. And as word spread, the galaxy whispered of a new terror. The Predators were no longer the only monsters in the dark. There were humans now. The Predators did not retreat into silence this time. Their counterstrike was immediate and overwhelming. Fleet after fleet poured into Council space, converging not on the scattered fringes, but on the jewel of the core. Prime, a cultural where the Council itself was born. Billions lived beneath its shimmering domes and crystal towers. Billions who had never known war, who believed peace eternal. To the Predators, it was the perfect target, a symbol, a feast. The warning came hours before impact. In the Council chamber, panic erupted as reports flooded in, swarms of jagged vessels breaching the system's edge, tearing apart outlying defense stations with contemptuous ease. The Council screamed for order, demanded explanations, begged for solutions. But their fleets were ornamental, their soldiers ceremonial. Prime was naked before the storm. And so, once again, a desperate message was sent. Earth, help us. The Terran First and Third Expeditionary Armadas arrived 3 hours later. To the citizens of Prime, the sight of Terran ships emerging from the void was both terrifying and miraculous. Dark, angular hulls bristling with weapons, carriers vomiting clouds of drones, destroyers poised like predators themselves. Where the Council's ships gleamed with ceremonial polish, Terran vessels radiated one message: survival at any cost. On the bridge of the TNS Valiant, Admiral Sophia stood in silence as the Predator Armada unfolded across the tactical dome. Hundreds of ships, dwarfing even humanity's largest carriers. Their sheer numbers blotted out the stars. Her XO swallowed hard. Admiral, if they break through. They won't, said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were steel. They came here expecting prey. Tonight they'll find hunters. The battle began with fire. Predator fleets surged forward, weapons blazing, their formation a wall of jagged death. Terran fleets answered not with brute strength, but with chaos. Minefields detonated in precise waves, shattering the enemy's vanguard into fragments. Stealth corvettes darted through their ranks, projecting false signals that lured Predator cruisers into crossfire. Rail cannons tore through their flanks, missiles split into swarms mid-flight, overwhelming defenses. But for every Predator ship that fell, 2 more pressed in. Their hunger was relentless, their silence unbroken. Council observers watching from orbit wept openly. We are finished, one whispered. No one can stand against such fury. But humanity had not yet revealed its hand. At signal, the Valiant unleashed the weapon the Council had banned centuries ago. Pulsed across the system, bending space into unnatural wells. Predator fleets suddenly found their vectors twisting against them, ships colliding, formations unraveling. Dozens were crushed in the distortions, their hulls splintering like eggshells. And then came the psychological strike. From hidden transmitters seeded weeks before, the Predators' own communication bands filled with voices, screams of dying crews, distorted by Terran AI into haunting echoes. To the Predators unused to fear, the effect was catastrophic. Formations broke. Some ships faltered, hesitating as confusion gnawed at discipline. For the first time, the Predators knew what it was to be prey. The Council was horrified. Watching from the safety of orbital stations, delegates recoiled as Terran fleets waged war with weapons and tactics thought barbaric. To them, it was butchery, manipulating gravity, sowing fear, unleashing chaos without restraint. They are monsters, one delegate hissed, trembling. No, Hale corrected coldly from the human observation deck. They are soldiers, and monsters fear soldiers more than anything. The climax came when Predator reinforcements attempted to flank the Terran line. Admiral anticipated it hours before. She ordered her reserve fleet to vanish into the dark and reappear directly inside the Predator formation, drives burning hot, weapons firing at point-blank range. The Predators, expecting an easy kill, were shredded. As their last formations broke, the remnants fled into the void, leaving wreckage strewn across Prime's skis. Humanity had held the line. But the cost was steep. Thousands of Terran sailors lay dead. Entire ships had been sacrificed. And below, on the surface of Prime, millions of civilians had perished before the Predators were driven back. The Council's chamber was silent the next day. They had been saved, but the price was written in fire across their skis. Delegates looked at the humans with something worse than fear, awe, for they realized a truth they had long: the galaxy had forgotten war. But humanity had never forgotten. Humanity had only been waiting. Hale stood before them, his voice low, unyielding. You see now, peace is not eternal, peace is not free, and peace will not survive unless someone is willing to fight for it. You could not. We did. But understand this, when we fight to win, and the mask of peace you wear will never blind us again. The chamber remained frozen in silence. The mask had shattered, and beneath it, the galaxy saw the monsters humanity had always been willing to become. The wreckage still burned in orbit above Prime. Broken Predator hulks drifted silently, their twisted hulls reflecting the system's twin suns like grave markers. Terran salvage ships picked carefully through the remains, recovering what they could, marking the rest for controlled detonation. On the surface below, billions of citizens mourned. Whole districts lay in ruins, domes shattered, towers collapsed. Smoke rose from craters where Predator bombardments had struck before the Terran counterattack. The once proud capital of the Galactic Council, a shining beacon of peace, now looked like a battlefield from Earth's darkest centuries. And for the first time, the Council could not pretend. War had come. Inside the emergency chamber, the delegates sat in silence. Gone were the flowing robes, the elaborate ornaments, the smug laughter. Now they wore mourning shrouds, their faces drawn tight with fear. At the center, Hale stood with Admiral. Hollow screens replayed the battle, every maneuver, every tactic. Predator wreckage marked in red, Terran losses marked in blue. The Council watched in horrified fascination. They saw Predator formations collapse under traps. They heard the screams broadcast into enemy channels, turning disciplined soldiers into frightened prey. They saw entire Terran ships sacrificed in suicide strikes, crews knowingly giving their lives to shatter the enemy's advance. At last, the Prime Speaker, its radiant light dimmed to a faint glow, whispered the words none had dared speak. Is this what you call victory? Admiral did not flinch. It is survival. Hale's voice was sharper. You mock us for fighting like barbarians, you look at what we do and call it monstrous, but the truth is simple: your civilization has forgotten what survival costs. Ours never did. The chamber erupted into uneasy murmurs. Some delegates cried out, accusing humanity of unleashing horror no better than the Predators themselves. Others sat in silence, trembling with the knowledge that without humanity's horror, they would all be dead. One elder delegate finally stood, her voice cracked with both fear and respect. We mocked the humans, we doubted them, and yet they stand here while we cower. Perhaps it is not their violence we should fear, but the truth they have always known. Meanwhile, aboard the TNS Valiant, the human crews felt little of triumph. The infirmaries overflowed with wounded. Hundreds of body bags lined the hangar decks, flags of Earth and Mars draped across them. Survivors moved like ghosts, their faces etched with exhaustion. Lieutenant Commander, survivor of station, sat beside a viewport staring at the drifting wreckage. His uniform was torn, his arm in a sling. We won, he muttered bitterly to his comrade. But look at us, half our fleet gone, and the Predators will be back. His comrade, a Marine with blood still staining his armor, gave a hollow laugh. That's the difference, isn't it? They think peace is eternal. We know it's just borrowed time. In Geneva, the Unified Defense Council convened in secrecy. Generals and admirals stood around a war table marked with crimson vectors, projected predator return routes, potential invasion corridors, fallback strategies. General's voice was grim. Every engagement costs us dearly. We are bleeding men, ships, and resources faster than we can replace them. Admiral nodded. True, but we are learning faster than they are. Every battle gives us data. Every skirmish teaches us new ways to fight. We adapt. They will never outpace us. Hale leaned forward, his expression cold. And the Council. They call us savages even as they beg us to fight for them. They want peace without blood, but blood is the only language predators understand. His words fell heavy, unchallenged. Back on Prime, memorials stretched for miles. Council citizens wept, their illusions broken. In the ruins of their capital, they whispered of humans, fearfully, reverently, with awe and dread. Children spoke of the Terrans as the fire in the dark. Elders muttered that the galaxy had invited wolves into their fold. Some prayed for deliverance. Others prayed that humanity would never turn their fire inward. That night, Hale recorded a message to Earth. His voice was low, his face weary. The predators were beaten back but not destroyed. They will come again, and each time the Council will look to us. They see us as monsters, but they need monsters to survive. That is the cost of chaos, the cost we bear. He paused, his gaze drifting to the stars. But I wonder, when the war is over, will they thank us? Or will they fear us more than the predators we destroyed? The transmission ended. And in the silence that followed, the question lingered like a shadow over the galaxy. The predators did not return immediately. Scouts tracked their broken fleets retreating beyond the edges of known space, their signals fracturing into silence. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was quiet, not with peace, but with the uneasy stillness of predators licking their wounds. The Council declared the war a victory. Declarations were spoken. Monuments were planned. Speeches promised a new dawn of unity. Yet beneath the glittering words lay a truth none could ignore. The predators had been repelled not by the Council's wisdom, but by humanity's savagery. And that truth frightened them more than the enemy ever had. On Prime, survivors gathered among the ruins. They whispered of Terrans with equal parts reverence and dread. Stories spread faster than fire. Of Terran Marines storming Predator cruisers, their war cries echoing down alien halls. Of ships diving into impossible odds, sacrificing themselves so others might live. Of voices carried on the Predators' own channels, whispering fear into minds that had never known it. To the Council's citizens, humans had become both salvation and specter, the guardians of their peace and the destroyers of their illusions. In the Council chamber, debates turned poisonous. They are not our allies, hissed one delegate. They are predators themselves, worse than the ones they fight. And yet without them we are ash, another replied bitterly. The Prime Speaker, its radiant light dimmed, addressed the assembly. Perhaps we should never have mocked them. Perhaps humanity carries something we cannot, an acceptance of violence as part of existence. But if we cannot carry it, then they must carry it for us. The chamber fell silent at the implication. Humanity, forever condemned to be the galaxy's weapon. Meanwhile, aboard the TNS Valiant, Admiral sat in her quarters, reviewing casualty lists. Names scrolled endlessly across the hollow display, each one a life extinguished for the survival of billions who had once sneered at Earth as primitive. Her door chimed. Hale entered quietly, carrying a glass of whiskey from Mars' oldest distillery. "You've read them all?" he asked softly. "Everyone." He poured 2 drinks, handed her one. For a long moment they sat in silence, the only sound the faint hum of the ship's engines. Finally spoke. "They fear us now, the Council, the civilians, even the ones we saved. They look at us as if we're a storm they can't control." Hale's smile was bitter. "Good, let them fear us. Fear will keep them alive when peace makes them blind." Across Earth, newsfeeds broadcast triumphant images of Terran fleets over Prime, banners proclaiming humanity, saviors of the galaxy. Crowds filled cities, chanting the names of lost heroes. Factories roared to life, shipyards glowed with constant labor. For the first time in history, humanity was united, not by exploration, not by trade, but by war. But behind closed doors, whispers grew darker. Generals spoke of building greater weapons. Scientists studied predator technology with ruthless curiosity. Leaders asked a dangerous question: if we can stand against the predators, who else can stand against us? The predators, in their silence, left something behind. Among the wreckage salvaged from orbit, Terran engineers discovered encrypted data cores. After weeks of decryption, fragments of maps emerged, maps pointing not to a single predator but to dozens. The predators were not a singular empire. They were something else, something older, something far larger. And they had only sent hunting packs. The war humanity fought was not the predators' full strength. It was only a test. Hale stared at the map projection, the vast networks of predator domains stretching like a web across the void. His chest tightened, not with fear, but with resolve. They were never just fighting us, he whispered. They were watching us, measuring us. Admiral's jaw clenched. And now they know. They've seen what humans are willing to do, what humans are capable of. Hale turned, his eyes shadowed, his voice low. Which means the next time they come, they won't come to feed, they'll come to kill. The Council prayed humanity would stand guard forever. Humanity prepared for a war that would never end. And in the darkness beyond the stars, countless predator eyes opened, watching, waiting, hungering. The galaxy had been at peace for, but now, because of humanity, it remembered what war was. And the greatest question lingered in every mind, whispered like a curse across the stars. When the predators return, will humanity still be the galaxy's savior? Or its next nightmare?